So that's it.
Sorry.
Okay.
Shalom, everybody. If you remember, I told you about this Amora or Tana that used to thank his back and knees for bowing in the right place. I thought it was Rabbi Ami, but apparently Rabbi Google thinks it's not because I couldn't find it. But it was basically the idea that sometimes we do things by rote if we got used to them. Um, and maybe it's not appropriate, but sometimes that's just how it happens. So we bow down during the Amidah, and most of us do it anyway. But it's good to find out the sources and when it's done exactly and for what reason. So that's what today's class will be about. So the Chachamim, our sages, instituted bowing down in 5 places in the Amidah, in the beginning and the end of Birkat Avot, the first blessing, in the beginning and end of Birkat Modim, the second last blessing, and at the end of the Amidah, when one takes 3 steps backwards. They specifically chose those 2 brachot, for they are the most important, and while reciting them, one must try hard to concentrate properly. There's even an opinion, which we talked about a little bit, which is that if you didn't concentrate on the first blessing, you actually have to start all over again, because that is the most important. So even if a person is going to be traveling, or the soldiers during like a break in battle, the first blessing is said completely, and then for the 13 blessings of our requests, it shortens to a prayer called Havinenu, which we didn't talk about, but just to show you how important the beginning and end are, because we talk about first glorifying Hashem and what Hashem does in the world, and then we end with giving thanks to Hashem for everything that Hashem does for us. And we even mentioned Erev Avoka v'Tzoraim, evening, morning, and afternoon. If a person wants to bow down at the beginning or end of another bracha, he is taught not to, so as not to uproot the ruling of the Chachamim, and so that he will not look like an arrogant person who considers himself more righteous than others. So if we have a standard that we only bow down at those 2 blessings, then we do not bow down in any other blessing. However, in the middle of the brachot, he is permitted to bow down. So if somebody adds words, specifically for healing or in other blessings, he can bow down because it's like asking the king for a special favor. One bows down when saying Baruch Atah and straightens himself when saying Hashem. At Modim, he bows down when he says Modim Anachnu and straightens up when saying Hashem. So, Rick, you have a question?
Yeah, so bowing down is a sign of humility. So why is it limited to the 5 times during the immediate service and not allowed or not seen appropriate in other parts of the service?
So just that everybody else around you is not bowing down any other times. So when we bow down like that, we're showing that we are better than others, like holier than thou kind of thing. That's just his explanation, and I believe that is the correct one. But we'll talk about after
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
The bow must be such that all the vertebrae in one's spine move in place, one after the other, and the vertebrae protrude from his back. Most people today do not know how to do that, and a lot of us are older, and the bones aren't like that. One bends his head and back until his face reaches the height between his heart and his waist, but he should not bend his head all the way until his belt, because that gives the appearance of arrogance. Again, that this is something that is based on what is acceptable or not acceptable. We talked a little bit about rising when an important person comes. So again, the same idea. If the king is in the room and we have a custom to stand when the king and queen, the bride and groom, walk in, so it's the same idea. We don't bow down to them because they're not our king and queen, but we bow down at the end of the Chadadif for the same exact reason. When we say boy kala, we bow once to the left, once to the right, and once in the middle. An elderly or ill person who has difficulty bending down lowers his head as much as he is able to, and again, without causing any pain, because we don't want to cause anybody any pain. One must bow down quickly to demonstrate his desire to bow before Hashem, and when he straightens himself, he must do so slowly, as one who is interested in continuing to bow down before him, but we are continuing with the blessing. Otherwise, it will take a very long time to say the Shmoneh Esrei, and maybe before we continue, the Talmud does say about Rabbi Akiva that there were times that when you left him in one corner of the shul, you would find him in the other corner because he would actually prostrate himself. And you have to remember again the context that in those days he suffered through the destruction of the temple. He lived during the second rebellion, so that means that when he died, we believe at the age of 120, that meant that he experienced the temple for at least 65 years of his life. So in the temple, they did bow down all the way to the floor. We today only do that in Yom Kippur, but the idea is that there were different standards. And then after Rabbi Akiva's life, during the time of the Amoraim, when the Talmud was written, they basically standardized again that we only do it to lower our back until we are almost horizontal, because our face is somewhere between our chest and our abdomen, but we don't go all the way down except for on Yom Kippur. The Ashkenazi custom, as far as I know, is 3 times on Yom Kippur during the Avodah of Musaf. There are 2 minhagim regarding the manner of bowing. According to the minhag of the Ashkenazim, when one says Baruch, he bends his knees, and when he says Atah, he bows until his vertebrae click, in quotation marks. And the reason for this, if you know a little bit of Hebrew, we just talked about that before the class. The word Baruch comes from havracha, which is to plant a tree that you take a branch that is pretty long, you make a bend in it, almost like the bend between 2 camel humpbacks, and then you cover it with dirt, and then the rest of the branch sprouts out, and after it starts growing itself with developing its own roots, you cut that first connection, and so the word Baruch is from the word Berech, which is the Hebrew word for our knee, and so it's just to remind us how we do it. At Modim, in which the word Baruch is not recited, one bows immediately without initially bending his knees. So that's the Ashkenazi custom. And the Sephardim practice according to the Ari, and bow down in 2 stages. First, a person bends his body without bending his knees, and then his head. Similarly, when one straightens himself, first he straightens his body, and afterwards his head. So both opinions are mentioned here. Again, Baruch literally means the knee, and Havracha, which is from agriculture. I think it's amazing that we're learning that in Parshat Behar, because Havracha is not allowed during the Shemitah year. And so there's a lot more to discuss here. And so if you want, I'll write some references in the comments on YouTube, and we'll stop here. And if there's any questions,